Good morning, everyone. Welcome to Sonoma Raceway. We'll start off our media availabilities with Jimmie Johnson, driver of the number 48 Lowe's Chevrolet, and one of 10 winners here over the last 11 races. It's just kind of odd. Maybe thought you could address that. First of all, do you remember what year you won?
Not the year.
Okay, 2010.
Way too long ago, I know that much.
So maybe talk about that a little bit. 10 winners over 11 years. This is obviously a wild card race. What makes it that way? What makes it challenging? And how it's shaped up over the last decade?
Yeah, it is a wild card race, but I feel like quickly running through my memory that whichever driver won has had a dominating day and a strong performance throughout the day. It's hard to repeat that for whatever reason. I don't exactly know why, but I think we've seen a real interesting shift in the last 10 years where the road course ringers, come in and they aren't taking the trophies home. It's really the NASCAR regulars. I think it shows the versatility we have as drivers and the teams as well to set up a car and make the car get around here. Strategy does play a role, and I think that cost us the win last year. So occasionally you have maybe a fuel mileage race that might mix it up a little bit, or strategy, and I think we just had a handful of laps left, decided to stay out, and the new tires got to us quickly last year. But it's fun racing. I really enjoy it. I wish we did more to have 2 road course races a year. You just kind of get into the swing of things when we leave the Glen, and then you put it on the shelf and wait 8 months or so until you have to do it again.
All right, so I don't believe we have mics, but we will start with Jeff and then go to Jim and then over to Tom.
Jeff Owens, Sporting News. Jimmie, you mentioned road course ringers. When we used to come out here, you'd see several. And occasionally one would do well, like Morissette or somebody. But there's hardly none anymore. Why do you think that's gone away? They don't even come and try.
Well, I think the team owners feel confident in the regular drivers. It's obviously expensive for a team to put up a top-notch effort to bring Boris or one of the ringers out here, Scott Pruitt or something. You look at Ganassi, and they have room to bring a couple cars if they wanted to, but I guess maybe expense has something to do with it. I'm not really sure. And then the regulars are doing such a good job, they don't have that need, I don't think, as much as in the past.
All right, we'll go over to Jim. We do have a microphone. My apologies. Jim, and then over to Tom, and then Bob. And then we'll go back to you.
Jim out of motorsport.com. You have known for a while that you're pretty much locked in the chase. You had a couple wins fairly early in the season. Over the last several weeks, you've had some really strong days at the track. You've had some not so good days. I just wondered, how would you assess your team right now? You never really know if people are trying things and so forth. Just wondered what your take was on the last several weeks.
Yeah, I mean, we definitely have been trying some things. You need to advance, but I wouldn't say that we're trying things because we're locked in. It's just kind of the natural progression of the sport, and looking around the garage area and just kind of making some beliefs or thoughts about where you might be getting beat and what that might be. So, but we've been strong. I don't think our results are representative of the strength of the team, especially the last 2 weeks with strong cars and crashes late that affected our finish. But we're doing good, and obviously we have high expectations, so we need to get back to our winning ways, leading laps, finishing. If we don't win, let's make sure we start finishing top 2 or 3, because that momentum breeds so much confidence within the race team, within decisions I make, Chad makes, the crew makes, the pit stops, all of that. So we need to get back into that, and I'm not happy with especially the way the last 2 races went and the results we had with strong days.
All right, we'll go Tom, then Bob, and then to the back row here.
Jimmie, Tom Jensen, FoxSports.com. Given that the final 11 races of the regular season, there's only one track that's also the Chase, New Hampshire. If you're a casual fan looking at this, how much do you read into what happens between now and the start of the Chase? And I don't want to say how serious the drivers and the teams take this. Is it easier to write it off, I guess, this time of year if you have a bad race?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I think our track record, especially in the Chase era, shows that a slow summer doesn't prevent you from winning a championship. So I guess there's some stats to prove that. It's not fun going through that. You know, if you're winning, you find, you know, it's not hard to find the silver lining and all that, but if you're off, you can find some silver lining and they're not chase tracks and so forth and so on. So we'll make up any angle we need to believe it, for starters. And then, you know, they're just unique tracks that are coming up. Brickyard's exciting. I think everybody gets fired up for that. So I don't know how much people should read into it. And then the other thing that makes me believe more in that is the elimination process and how it's not over 10 races, essentially. You know, we're knocked out in Dover with a part failure. So it's really hard to form an opinion of a champion in this format in general.
Thank you.
All right, we'll go in the back row to Bob, and then in the back row, and then over to Holly.
Testing.
There's a lot of talk after Talladega about potential changes to the package at Daytona, and it looks like you're going back there next week with the same package. I mean, are you comfortable with the package you're using at plate races, and have you talked to NASCAR at all since Talladega about any potential changes?
Yeah, I think we had one driver council meeting since. I don't remember spending a ton of time talking on it. I know following Talladega, there were a lot of suggestions made. You know, I'd certainly had some opinions of why passing was as difficult as it was, and the energy that it created in the pack, and the need to kind of bump draft and slam draft and then crash, like that whole process that took place. You know, I know that they don't want to overreact, and we're going to a different track, and Daytona works a little bit differently than Talladega does, so I feel comfortable with it. I think ideally we would love to have the side draft be less impactful. You would love to have a push from another car be more beneficial, and with the gear and horsepower reduction, I think that took away some of that offensive opportunity that existed. But we'll see how Daytona races and take it from there. And I know there's another driver council meeting down in Daytona. Probably top of mind for everybody there.
All right, we'll go in the back row here, then over to Holly, and then over to you. Go ahead.
Isabel Gonzalez, ESPN Albuquerque. The past 7 Sonoma races, you've had top 10 finishes. Do you and your team look at numbers like this when approaching this weekend?
Yeah, I mean, the results, yes, maybe not as important as where we were running and how the car was performing. The pitch strategy, fuel strategy, a variety of other things can kind of lead to a poor finish, which unfortunately is fresh in my mind from last year and dominating the race, and then having new tires catch and pass us with a lap or two to go. So, you know, and that's what I'm hanging on to, is how strong our car was. I know in the setup and bringing the car here, very focused on staying close to where we were, just because we had such a great race car. So a little bit, but mainly performance and kind of where you stood up against the field is more representative than the number in the finish column.
All right, over to Holly.
Holly Kane, NASCAR.com. Jimmy, this is sort of along the lines of Tom's question, but because there are no road course races in the Chase, when you guys come to these two tracks, is it a lot more of that all-in type feeling, because you're not experimenting, you're not looking at anything that's going to happen at one of the oval tracks where you might want to prepare for it?
Yeah, I think that's our strategy for sure. We're all in. You know, we have 2 races to fall back on for the Chase qualification, so that makes it easy. But even trying to think through other years where we weren't locked at this point, it's such a unique track and race and opportunity that we were all in. And I think in order to have a good result here, and especially a shot to win, you've got to push fuel strategy to the, you know, to the nth degree. Now it seems like tires and restarts are far more important than in the past. So we're all in, but I think if you do need to come here and be aware of points, it is a track that a lot can happen, and if you are smart and stay out of trouble and you're around that 16th cutoff, you might be able to jump 3 or 4 spots. I'm fortunately not in that mindset, but from where I'm sitting, it's all about aggression and trying to win.
To the left. then
Hey,
to you,
Jimmy. Phil
George.
Barber, Santa Rosa Press Democrat. When people think of the road courses, I think we tend to focus on all the left-right turns with good reason. But are the elevation changes a big factor as well? And if so, what are the challenges that they create?
Yeah, the elevation changes are definitely a key component here. As you're coming around turn one, that long sweeping left-hander, you really don't have to use the brakes much, and that's something different than the majority of the tracks we run at. You let the car kind of slide into the track, into the banking, into the hill, and it drags speed out and puts grip in the car, so it's a totally different sensation and technique. 3 and 3A, especially being right out of 3A, if you get too much curb or not enough and end up 4 or 5 inches wide on exit, you can't see where the road is until you're in the dirt, and then it's way too late and you're in big trouble. I'd say coming out of 8 is a very similar sensation like that, where you're sliding up over the road. You can see where the track turns for turn 9 way out in front of you, but where the edge is and where the dirt is pretty blind, and it takes a couple laps to get a feel for it. So I enjoy it. It's a lot of fun to have those kind of off camber, or just the undulation of the track. It's a lot of fun.
George Winkler with NASCAR.com. Would it mean anything extra to win again in California, represent California, maybe give you something to talk trash about with the other California drivers?
Yeah, absolutely. There's, first of all, nothing like winning. Winning is very special and unique in our sport. And the road courses, I felt like coming into my Cup career with my off-road background, I would just excel and take off on road courses. But coming in, I was good for a couple laps, and I'd melt the tires off the car. And I've really had to learn discipline and where to make time and where to save the tire. It's a tough balance. So I still have kind of a personal, I don't know if it's a vendetta, but there's some kind of personal thing for me coming here, the Glen and Bristol. Those 3 tracks, like with my driving style and my background, those should be my best tracks, and they're not. And it drives me crazy that they're not. So I come to Sonoma, Watkins Glen, and Bristol with high expectations on myself, and a win would be a big party.
Jason Tubes, Fox Oakland. Jimmie, NASCAR year over year has continued to improve the fan experience. One thing I've enjoyed is the Radioactive series that's online. What's your thoughts about that? Because it gives the audience a side of you that normally they don't see. Talking with your pit crew and sometimes some pretty questionable language. How do you feel it reflects on you as a driver?
You know, for me, it's always been part of our sport since fans have had scanners, I guess now. It's being broadcast and reaching far more ears and eyes than before. So that there is that element. It's amazing, though, when you're in the car and mad, you forget that children are listening, or maybe even your own children. My wife has shared with me that she'll never let her kids listen to me in a race. And I was like, really? I'm that bad? She goes, well, when you are bad, you are that bad. So it's just something you lose touch with, and I guess we're kind of familiar with it because they've always been public channels and stuff. So I do understand why it's entertaining, and I cringe every once in a while when I hear the term radioactive and wonder what I did the week before and what people are thinking.
How does it relate to here at Sonoma? Because, I mean, you got one of the tightest turns on the track, and, you know, people get dumped off every week, it seems, every time everybody races here. So.
Yeah, I think 7 and 11 definitely will provide plenty of opportunity for radioactive next week. I just hope I'm not one of the guys.
Mark Garrow, PRN. Jimmie, talking a little bit about Daytona next week again. As these packages change, does anything carry over, or do you have to just kind of go out there and relearn, you know, what you need to do to pass and to be successful on these restrictor plate races as the packages change?
They don't change a ton. I mean, different. There's some sensitivity change to the dynamics and how it works, but the package is still very similar. You just notice, man, I feel like last time I could clear a car more easily, or I could get up and push somebody a little bit harder and give them a run around a car. So it's more subtle things that we notice. You know, certainly when you're in the car after 300 or 400 miles and you can't complete a pass, the little bump turns into a nudge, into a slam, and then we have chaos like we did at Talladega. So I guess if it gets off to a slow start, you can probably bank on a wild finish.
Go ahead.
Dominic Udding on the RacingExperts.com. With this being such a physically demanding race, how much does an off week like last week affect you as a driver and the team overall?
Yeah, the off week definitely takes away some of the sensitivity in the car. I think most of us probably don't train and just check out and try to charge the batteries, hang out with your family and are out of the racing space. And certainly walking in the garage today and seeing my guys and running into the fans, there's been a few moments where I'm like, okay, I've been away for 10 days or whatever it is. Got to zero back in and remember what this is all about. So you lose a little bit, but within 10 or 15 minutes, that first practice session, it all comes back.
All right, we'll go to Jeff Owens, and we'll go right in front of him and over to the left, and we'll wrap it up with Claire B. Lang before Mr. Larson.
Jimmy, how will the smaller spoilers and the lower downforce affect the cars on a road course in the way you drive them? Or do you even know yet?
I don't know exactly.
What do you think?
Outside of the obvious stuff, I mean, I think there'll be more movement in the car. I think the grip level's just going to be down from braking to lateral. I don't think acceleration is going to change a ton because you're coming from such a slow speed up out of these corners. I don't think drive off will be a ton different, but the high speed corners you'll notice more of an impact than anything. The high speed braking zones. So aero related, I guess the first thing you just go through and the fastest points on the track for braking and turning will be where you'll notice it the most, and then least noticed in the slow corners.
Donna Beth Wellenman, Benicia Herald. I know that drivers train at such tracks as New Smyrna for the circle tracks. How do you all train for road course?
We really don't have an opportunity to anymore. If I could speak, the testing rules, the fact that we can't go test places. Teams would go to VIR, Kershaw, Road Atlanta. They're prior to this race, there'd be teams all over those three tracks, multiple days, just getting reps, getting time in the car. But now we don't. So I'm assuming some of the young guys are probably playing video games. I know there's a few simulators out there. I know GM has one, Ford has one, Toyota has one. So there's a little bit of simulator time. But that's really it. I'm glad that I'm a veteran, been here quite a few times, and not a young guy coming in trying to figure this place out.
All right, we'll go over to the left and then over to Claire B. Lang, please.
Yeah, Jimmy, Don Lang for SonomaRace.com. The track temperature will probably be one of the hottest it's been in many, many races. You have already a slick track with not a lot of traction. Now it's going to get slicker. How do you approach that?
I think that sounds awesome. More slipping and sliding to preserve your tires. Hopefully we'll take a fuel strategy play out of it and really let us focus on speed, put tires on the car, worry about charging. I'm not very good with fuel mileage savings, so anything that leads into putting tires on the car, pitting more often, fits my style. I'm not sure it'll be the same for everybody, but hot and slick sounds good for me.
Claire B.
Claire B. Lang, Sirius XM NASCAR Radio. Yesterday in San Francisco, there was conversation at the luncheon with the media that the drivers lose their heads, start out really calm here, and then at a certain point, everybody kind of lose their minds, and that Larry McReynolds said it'll be mayhem. And then also added to that, at the point that you do lose it because you're kind of wrapped up in it, when you already have a win, you have nothing to lose. Denny Hamlin talked about that yesterday. It's kind of crazy when you think about it. You have nothing to lose at this track. So at what point do you kind of lose your mind and just go for it?
Well, I think nothing to lose means different things to different drivers. Even if all things are equal and guys have a couple wins and can lock in, my approach is probably more on the conservative side. Others would just dump you and go on about their way and worry about the consequences later. So I think it means different things to different people. When I think of this race and all in, first thing that comes to mind is fuel strategy and saving every ounce of fuel, finding a nice spot to run on the track when the green flag runs, try to build a lap or two in so that we can two-stop the race. It doesn't come to mind of knocking somebody out of the way down here. We're just all wired differently. So we'll see which form plays out. And then I think the majority of the field is really focused on this unique track, unique place. Everybody's all in. And the frustration does build. And as soon as you can just see the energy in the field kind of build, and I guess that's what was being discussed yesterday. Once there's a block or two and somebody gets knocked out of the way, the whole group notices, and the slamming starts, and it just gets wild.
All right, thank you, Jimmy. Appreciate you coming in to kick off the day for us.